Happy What We Watch Wednesday. Very excited for all of you joining. Hello, Robert. If you're live with us today or you are tuning in from YouTube, welcome, welcome. We are all here. Happy What We Watch Wednesday. We're going to talk about some taboo things today, and we're going to make them less taboo in this space because we're not going to pretend like some of this stuff is just so beneath you and that, like, if you've never been intimate or sexual, that you're like the arbiter of like what should be on screen. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today to bridge Nosferatu and Baby Girl. Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers, the Robert Eggers, and quite frankly, Baby Girl, directed by the Helena Rajan. I hope I'm saying her name right. We follow each other. Hey, girl. We've been following each other since Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. That is the director for that amazing film as well. Robert, hi. How are you?
What's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Glad you could join. Hi, Edwin. Don't be shy. Come on up and speak. So let me let everyone join, and I'm sharing it and everything. Ooh, it's not shaking and stuff. So, did you watch both Nosferatu and Baby Girl, Robert, or did you just kind of watch one of them, or neither?
I have not had the chance to watch either of them yet. I've been traveling a lot, but they're both on my list to see
Okay,
in the
great,
next week or two.
great. Um, I did a double feature same day, and it was actually one of the most perfect double features. If I'm going to be completely honest, the Barbenheimer double feature did not work for me personally. I loved both movies separately, but the experience was very bizarre for me personally. So I'm really glad that this new double feature of Nosferatu and Baby Girl made a lot of sense to me in the right order. Um, but happy What We Watch Wednesday. This was our What We Watch rec, and we're going to be talking about these two films. And we're allowed to, you know, have the intellectual chat about being horny. And unfortunately, horny has such a negative connotation, especially on the internet, because people take it too far. And I just want to inject the intellectualization of intimacy and sex and romance and the horny of it all right back into the conversation. There are people like like TJ that take it too far sometimes online, but
I
let's
disagree
not
with
let's not negate how important it is in film to talk about sex. So my thing is, first of all, my friend texted me was like, "Not you advocating for sex scenes in film." And Tej, before I even answer that egregious thing said to me, how do you feel just overall about sex and intimacy on screen, whether it be in film or TV, but primarily film since we've got the double feature today?
how do I feel about it generally? I feel like we don't get a lot of it anymore. I feel like a lot of filmmakers shy away from that and they imply it as opposed to put it on screen. Um,
Why do you think
and
that is?
Well, because I think one, sex leads to a lot of people to misinterpret like whatever the director's vision is, and or two, that they're interested in telling these stories, but they're not necessarily interested in the minutia, the details of sex, versus like just you, the viewer, knowing that sex is happening. Is a lot of times enough. But I just think that we are as a society, we're a lot more sexless than previous versions of our society across the board. So I think movies are just reflecting that reality of sex being maybe more taboo than it has been in previous years. Not in every year or every iteration of our country of our society, but definitely more recent iterations of our society had a maybe a better view of sex, and also other countries maybe have a better or more healthy relationship with sex than us as Americans have always had a weird relationship with sex, and I think that shows itself in our filmmakers.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of notes on that. I think our filmmakers, as one myself, we do want to express that. I think, we're the weirdos of the society, we're the creatives, we're the somewhat introverts, but we don't really shy away from the complications around sex and sexuality and being horny and how that can govern some of the decisions we make. And I think through art, we're able to express everything: sadness, happiness, right? Your basic anger, revenge, but we don't talk about sexuality and romance and intimacy enough. And I think, to your point about this kind of iteration and these generations, and like maybe just we'll focus on American like demographics, like you were mentioning, that sexlessness in our lives is so interesting to me because it would makes sense to me that we'd want more of it on screen since we're like more sexless as a whole, right? According to all of the statistics and according to my life as well, unfortunately. But I feel like we'd want more of that on screen. How do you feel about that, Robert? Like, is it, do we want everything to reflect? What happened to escapism? Why don't we escape into more sexual things? Or, I'll say the buzzword: is porn just something that we think owns sexuality so that we diminish it as an art form in other areas? What do you think, Robert, as a filmmaker yourself?
I think Americans have a very weird relationship when it comes to sex, and that comes back to our very founding as a country being a puritanical society with the Puritans. It's always been taboo. It's always been wrapped in with religion. It's always been something that has been hush hush tones. So even when it reflects in our art and what we watch, it's also always been weird, or either it's been too graphic or it's been not subtle enough. It's one of those things where it's just like, because of how we are as as a society in America, it's very taboo still. So there's still, like I think Tej was saying about over in Europe, they have a more healthy relationship with sex and sexuality, which helps. And America does not have that, which reflects in our filmmakers when they do things and do topics about sex.
Mm, What do you think, Edwin?
I agree with what Robert has said. We Americans do have a strange relationship with sex, a very more like, oh, like clutch their pearls type of way. And you could see it around in art when there is more open to sexuality, and you see the older folks or the previous generations like shocked of like what's become. And of course in Europe, and you would see in France or even in Germany in the 20s when they would be open with their sexuality, they're more adult about it and more understanding of it. But for us, like Americans, we're super judgy when it comes to other people's sexuality or just sex in general, and it's been a constant uh, dialogue that we never been able to break the cycle because there's always we have to
Right,
protect the children in terms of like what's being
right,
said in high schools, and then it stunts their understanding of sex, and then you see like people not having healthy relationships that a human being needs to have.
right.
And we're really we're back again, like we're struggling it, and you see it in how people go too far on this app. uh
Yeah,
and it's just
yeah.
you see like how it's been not taught or understand the proper way. So
Right. And and thank you for saying that. I think that's why I wanted to inject some intellectualism. We've only been in here for like 10 minutes and we're using terms like puritanical and understanding like our society versus European society, which is so brilliant and interesting to me because if you think about a lot of and those of you in the space, think about a lot of British films and TV shows that you've been exposed to or experienced or enjoyed recently and throw them out here because I do feel like the way that they portray sex, especially kinks and BDSM and just like how sexuality and intimacy can, again, I keep saying this, but it's very important, reflect in our decision making, right? Like it's no less of a, marker of how we may move forward than say anger or happiness or, greed or anything else. Like sexuality does govern a lot of what we may want to do, and that should be reflected on screen. And I think Nosferatu and Baby Girl captured that so well, which is why I was so excited to talk about these movies. Seeing them back to back, it's dishonest, right? To say that these movies are not extremely horny movies centered around sex and romance and ownership and power and whatever comes to mind when you think about sex, right? And again, you're right, Robert and Tej, like America's relationship with sex is so unhealthy. But I'm curious what you guys think a healthy relationship looks like. Does Europe have it completely right, or do they go overboard, or are we just kind of too, masked with our relationship with, like Edwin was saying, online and with pornography? Like, I'm glad that Nosferatu and Baby Girl didn't shy away from it. Maybe we're getting close enough to a point where we can have these conversations. What we watch is going to talk about it 100% of the time. I want to welcome Jasmine Charisse to the stage. Hi, welcome. Happy What We Watch Wednesday.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here.
Excellent.
Long time supporter, first time Twitter Space talker. So
Yes,
this is
thank
great.
you. So we're talking about, sex. And not just sex in the way, like, probably like the first thing that comes to mind is, your personal relationship with sex. But we're kind of zooming out. Like, how do you feel about sex and intimacy on screen? What we see in Hollywood, what we need more or less of? Because I get a lot of the younger people saying, like, oh, we don't need all of this on screen. And I've always found myself like, is it that we need less or that we need it done better, right? So, Jasmine, what do you think?
I agree that we need it done better. I think there's like certain like TV series and certain movies that over exaggerated. So when I think about like an over exaggeration of sex is like BMF, right? BMF, Power, those type shows that the sex is always just like randomly placed and over exaggerated. But then you have certain movies that kind of hit it on the head where you don't necessarily see the actual, I guess, like physical act of the sex or the visual act, but you see like the intimacy, the slow kissing, the romance of it. And I think we need more of that, especially when it's strategically and placed in a movie or a series like perfectly and not just thrown in there because you just want to see sex.
Of course, definitely. And I think there's something to that, right? Because that's what I was thinking as well, especially with Nosferatu and Baby Girl. Like, you hit it right on the nail. I don't know if you've seen either of these films, but we open with Nosferatu with a very similar kind of thematic element of that intimacy and that suggestion and implication of sexuality and arousal, right? I think the word is like arousal, right? Which might be the more like academic word than horny, but like let's call it horny. Teach, go ahead.
So to bring it to the films, I heard an interview with Robert Eggers, who's the director of Nosferatu, and he was being asked questions about some of the sex in the movie and some of the themes of the movie, and he kept on reiterating that he's working in the age in which he's making the movie, which is the age in which people thought that there was a such thing as vampires, right? Even though vampires are not real, like vampire people being scared of vampires and the way they treated vampires is extremely real. And this movie is set in that time period where this was a reality. So he was saying like the sexual mores, for example, of the protagonist, who the Lily-Rose Depp character, are of that time. And if you feel like they're commenting on sexual mores of women in this particular time, he was saying like maybe it will resonate in that way, but also maybe it's not applicable in the same way. So I also did the double feature along with Mo of both of these films together. And it struck me that these are like one of them is contemporaneous with our times. Baby Girl is about somebody who lives at the time we live. So the what sex is like in that world is automatically identifiable to us because we live in the same world. So you don't really have to explain it. Whereas in Nosferatu, he doesn't do a lot of like explaining like what it means for a woman to have desire in this way, but this is huge. This is in sometime in the 19th century. Like women having sexual desires of in itself would subject you to criticism at the best. Like we live in a very different world as opposed to the world of this character, and so much of the movie is centered on her sexual urges, her wants generally, her needs generally, not just sexually. So much of the movie is focused on Nosferatu's Count Orlok's obsession over her body, obsession over her sexuality, and so
Versus, you're saying versus Baby Girl, which is the
versus
female
Baby Girl, which
desire.
is
Yeah,
well, yes, Baby Girl is about our protagonist's desires, versus Nosferatu
right.
is about Lily Rose Depp's desire, but it's more, at least at the more of a center of it, it's about somebody who desires her and the lengths that he's willing to go through to get her body, so to speak. So
And let's
I
not
just
and let's not shy away from it, right? It's power. I I think, to Robert Eggers' probably point in the interview too, like, a lot of times when we talk about sex in our day and age in a negative way, it's about the power that a person has over it. And a lot of the dialogue in Nosferatu too, chime in, would you agree? It's the power that you have in sex, right? And Baby Girl touches on it too, but it just looks at it from a perspective of a woman being in power and, being intimate with a subordinate versus Nosferatu set in the times, right? Which it's interesting you say that it might be a little bit more like related to where we are now. But I honestly felt like Nosferatu hit more, maybe I should have been born in those times, but it hit closer to me. It felt a little bit more sexy and realistic to me. And maybe I'm just still a victim of the patriarchy, that's fine. But that there really wasn't a lot of focus on Lily Rose Depp's desires unless she was struggling with them, right? The desires that she had were really focused and really, to me, in depth of love and romance and desire to be like protected and wanted by her husband. And then it was like the kind of playing between her husband versus Count Orlok or Nosferatu, right? And so, but the sexuality to me that we're applying in Nosferatu was really kind of governed by Nosferatu. It was really kind of governed by what he wanted from everyone, right? Or what he
well,
wanted from Lily
I
Rose
want to
Depp.
disagree a little bit there because I think that, well, at least my read of the movie
Hmm.
is that, so in the scene, in the big scene, and I won't say what the big scene is in case someone has seen the movie. In our big scene,
At
I
the
think
end,
it's I yes, I think it's at least written. I think it's probably on the text somewhere that this one, it's about sexual agency. Obviously, her wants and needs. She is the one who's bringing this plan to Akimi. She sets up basically a false flag mission so that she can be the one to deal with this problem in the way she sees fit, right? But
correct.
also too, in the way that the scene is shot and filmed and performed, it, I at least read it as like there's certain amounts of pleasure that she took from the experience as well. It did not
Yeah.
feel like, you didn't read it that way.
I don't think anything you've said is a disagreement with me. I think what I'm saying is that if we look at the thematic elements and the kind of plot of Lily Rose's Depp character throughout, you cannot talk about her desires without talking about the turmoil. Remember how she talks about, I saw death, right? And she does so well in showing you that I saw death, but I was happy in death, right? I desired this. He's had control over me for a while, but I also want to be there with him. So to me, I'm not saying that she didn't have any desires and that she didn't have any power, but I think the power was in Nosferatu and she was kind of a part of it. Maybe at one point she didn't have agency and then she developed it. Because to me, the reason why the end scene hit so hard was because it was an act of service. Right? She did have turmoil the entire time. It's dishonest to say that she wasn't struggling throughout the entire movie with her desire versus the power versus the love she had for her husband. And so we have to put that all in the same pot. Do you feel what I'm saying? We can't
Yeah,
just say that like it was just all her desire without seeing that she was struggling the entire movie with what that desire did to her as a child into adulthood, into choosing to be married. Does that make sense? You know what
that
I
makes
mean?
sense. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Southern Coastal Elite first. Did you see Nosferatu and or Baby Girl?
Yes, I saw Nosferatu Christmas Eve.
Awesome. Go ahead.
What I actually wanted to bring back to is sex, the sex that we want to see. Well, one of my favorite TV shows ever is Skins. It's the first time you're seeing adult Nicholas Holt as Tony. And the first scene of that show is him getting off from under covers, and the people on his covers are naked people. and that show like navigates like British teenagers coming of age, going through sex, friendship, all of these things, seeing him from them to Warm Bodies to even the vampire movie with Nick Cage, like seeing his transformation of just supreme male to understanding partner in this movie. He went to that castle for her. He
Period.
believes in her. He believes her. Like in a like he might not have it all, but he believes in her enough. Not just I don't think just as a husband is has to do that for his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he actually has that in him for her and them.
Did
Yeah.
he go to the castle for her though? I don't know if I agree with that.
Are you talking about Nosferatu went to the city, or are
No,
you
I'm
talking
talking
about the
about the
husband?
husband went to the went. She said the husband went to the castle for his wife, but did he
So,
though? Because
so
if I
I
remember
love
Yeah,
correctly, his wife told him not to go, and he still went.
he went for his own desires,
He
but
went
maybe
because
it,
he wanted that
I,
money.
I saw
but
the
he
I
men
wanted
saw
can
that
the
money,
but men can
but
convince themselves. Southern, I know you going. Where you going, man? Let me add in too. Men can convince themselves that what they're doing is for the betterment of their lives and their houses and their wives, even though their wife is literally saying, "I don't want this." So
correct. Especially at that time, what else
yes,
does he have?
yes. It's like, baby, I'm seeing you like struggle. You have these nightmares. And to me, Tej, thank you for bringing up the time period. We have to be honest. We're going to talk about this. Might be a sensitive topic, but you can see everything happening in the news now. But there was a very adamant and direct comment on how he had taken over her since childhood. To have that type of relationship with this being in childhood is inappropriate. Maybe back then the ages and things look very different, but today that is illegal, that is inappropriate. So for that relationship to have developed at such a young age, that development of agency and her, like, we can't, that can't be lost on us in this time period, right? And so that's why it's set back then versus Baby Girl that's set in these times where we are having the conversation like this is inappropriate because of the age difference. Whereas we know vampires are how old, right? But it works. We can do it. We can release this type of movie in 2024 and 2025 because vampires aren't real. But if we immerse ourselves in the reality, Lily-Rose Depp's character, I can't even remember her name, goodness gracious. Like, she didn't have any agency. She was groomed by this being. Go ahead, Edwin. I see your hand up. And then Mike, welcome to the stage. Can't wait to hear your perspective as well. Edwin, go ahead.
So I saw the movie last night,
Nice.
because the holidays I got really sick, and New Year's I had an ear infection, so I could hear like 30% on my left ear. So I was like, I'm just gonna have to wait this out.
But I
So I
just,
saw it in IMAX, and it was worth it. At like 9 p.m. showing, and I was actually, even though like I got spoiled with the movie. I mean, like we all know it's an old movie, but like in terms of like what Eggers did,
mhm,
with the Ellen character, in terms of like we're getting a layer of her character, like she's going through sexual repression
right.
and trying to deal with how to handle these feelings that, we're in the 1800s, and even though it's Germany, we all understand is like this is not ladylike.
Yes, and
It's
they're not for
unbecoming.
her husband.
Yeah, and it's unbecoming of her.
And
And
yes.
even though like Bill Skarsgård was great as Count Orlok, I feel like Lily-Rose Depp had the hardest part in the
Mhm.
movie, because like she has to do things that's like really uncomfortable that I'm not gonna understand as a man. But like seeing like what her character goes through, and like the shame that she feels from Frederick and the doctor, and just be like what's wrong with you, is like I have these visions, I have these connections with this spirit. And it's like the way like she's talking is like it's not the it's romanticism, which is like the era which art, literature were coming out as like these connections of like the unknown with God, but also the appreciation of nature and science. So it's like that's what Frankenstein deals with like the romanticism. And so with this is like it's not like a love thing. It's just like these feelings that I feel as an individual that is really hard to speak out at a time like that we're all individualistic people today. Like we feel like how I feel as a person, but back then it was like this is society and I can't be feeling these things.
Right. I love that you use the term shame, Edwin. And TJ, I don't know where your brain is going when you think of that word, but I find a through line already with shame in Nosferatu and Baby Girl, and I'm very interested in hearing your perspective on shame. And I think we can't talk about why is sex taboo without really hitting on shame. So Edwin, thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like
So
there's something
I
there. Can I let Mike speak real quick and then you take us from there?
How are you? How's everybody doing?
Good. Hi, Mike.
Good, good. Hey, this movie, I tell you, I went, I saw this. Okay, I see a lot of films with my daughter. Right, she's 25. She was film production at Chapman. Yeah, so I go a lot of stuff with her, and certain stuff are like, do we want to see this with each other? As parent, dad. But this movie was wild. I mean, and you guys touched on all that stuff. Not to mention, and you talked about why is it taboo? Well, you got like, listen, when you see stuff on screen that necrophilia or domination or that it's just is a little uncomfortable, right? Because most of us are like, you don't feel great about that, right? Because in the real world that's not very good, but at the same time in cinema anything goes. And most times in cinema, that's what you see. You see this. You don't see like loving, sexual, healthy relationships usually, right? In films, I'm trying to think about that.
And like
It's
why?
right.
Why though?
I don't. It doesn't sell. Maybe they can't get the rating. Maybe. Well, because if they do it too much, they can't get the R rating. Right. It'll be an X film,
Right.
which I think Midnight Cowboy was an X, by the way, back in the day, because there's a lot of stuff going on in that film. But I mean, so you usually see this, but this is different too. But so it's just so there's so much going on in this movie.
Hmm.
I mean, just watching him and everything going on, all the special effects and all the some of these scenes, and then like you talk about, we don't give it away at the end what went on there, but I think it's the taboo is just being uncomfortable. I mean, just kind of the way
Mm.
they portray it sometimes. I think a lot of us are like, and I'm not saying people do whatever, in their lives, but as a group, if you're watching it with another group, right, that's why you always
Right.
hear a little gas and this and that. And you just don't, I mean, maybe different countries is different, but here we're always just kind of like, okay, I'm seeing that up, with a group. Now, a lot of people watch stuff at the price of their home, do whatever, we know. But in
Right.
a big group, it's a little bit different, right?
Do
When you're
you
watching that
think
kind of stuff.
Tej, talked earlier a little bit about like time period and like film and how it reflects our
Uh-huh.
society now versus, back then. Just as someone that can always, give me a good 70s, 80s movie, have
Yeah.
you noticed a significant decline in sex in film or the same or like more?
I, maybe to, well, and you're talking about the other film too with Baby Girl. I mean, I'm not sure if it's maybe is it less. I'm trying to think back to
Yeah.
maybe more shocking. Maybe some of it is a little bit more shocking now,
Okay.
but you maybe can get away with a little more now. Because, like I said,
Yeah.
back then, when you watch Midnight Cowboy, now you go, that's not an X-rated film
Yeah,
when it came out.
exactly.
Like, what's X about it? Well, because some of the, you're not going to
You
see,
see some of
anything
the
that's homosexual. Forget it. You're not going to see stuff, or you're not going to see prostitution or whatever it is.
yeah.
But there's been stuff in the past oh my god, that's the most controversial thing. And now you watch it, it's funny, does it hold up and still is shocking?
Interesting.
And not usually, right? I mean, I haven't seen Midnight Cowboy in years, like to see that again. But even all these just Taxi Driver or that film or
Yes.
whatever, anything else to do with kind of violence and sex or whatever. I don't know. It's
And thank you for saying that
you
because as
know,
you've been speaking, I realize that
yeah,
almost every sex scene that I can think of right now
yeah,
is sandwiched for in film. Now, I was going to say
right.
earlier that TV, because probably the way that we've got 10, 30, 40 hours to create relationships between two characters, I think we can do sex
Mm-hmm.
a lot differently in TV.
Mm-hmm.
But in film specifically, I just think about it, I'm like, sex is always sandwiched between some sort of like violence or some sort of
Yeah.
power imbalance. I think about the way that we get away with a lot of sexual scenes, and um, I think stuff like Final Destination, T. West's ex Pearl and Maxine. I think of Nosferatu, right? And that's why I love Baby Girl, because there was no real violence, like patriarchal violence. There was just like, hey, and Helena Rejan, who, directed this movie and directed Bodies, 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 talked about it. And she specifically said, I did not want to punish my lead. I did not want to punish the woman. I did not want to punish the protagonist.
Hmm.
And I think that was bold, right? Because a lot of times we see if someone, the morning show on Apple TV is about sexuality in the workplace, and how, the show is fantastic because it's like, these are the punitive, like, approach to someone who does this in the workplace. While Baby Girl was like, it's a woman. And we punish women all the time, either by being the victim or paying the price when they're not the victim. What happens if we just kind of like let it be? And I think that's why a lot of men, a lot of straight men might have been a little confused, because Baby Girl, sorry to spoil, but there there's punishment, but it's just like an undertone of punishment. There's no real like punishment for her. And so it allows her to have these sexual desires, and it allows her to like express this power. And I'm curious how it would work if it was baby boy. Like, if the man would, like, I wonder how this movie works. And so it just opens up so many conversations. But I want to go back to shame and let T speak. Go ahead.
Obviously, that's a big some connective tissue between the shame of our two
Leads.
our two protagonists in the movies. They
Lily-Rose
obviously have
Depp
both.
and Nicole Kidman, for those of you tuning in, this is what we watch Wednesday.
Yes, they are obviously both dealing with some shame. What you liked about Baby Girl is something I actually didn't like about Baby Girl.
Yeah, I
Not
know.
that I wanted Baby Girl to be punished, but I just feel like, don't pussyfoot around with it. Like, either give us an unflinching view of the sex life of this woman, where she's not dealing with, like, where she's not being punished, which we've seen 100 films with men where they have sex and they're not punished for the sex they have, regardless of their situation, regardless of it's a coworker, regardless of if they're in a marriage, whatever. That's like every movie where a man has sex ever. If we're going to make a movie where we don't want to punish our protagonist, I don't understand why we put the marriage in the center of the movie and then have a quote unquote fallout when really there's no real fallout of that. I thought that completely took me out of that whole buildup of, we're establishing the fact that this is a married woman who's having some sex on the side. That's fine with me, but either have her not be punished, or go through it. But I didn't understand having the big blow up with the husband and the the boyfriend dude, only for that to be over in 5 minutes and we just back to our lives. I hated that. I really
If
hated it.
I'm hearing you correctly, you don't have a problem with the lack of punishment. It sounds like what you said to
No,
me.
the lack of punishment is fun, but
What you said was centering the marriage. I think that's a little bit more honest. And I think I understand you a little bit more, because first I was like, I was not into it. I was like, what's happening? So you're saying that centering the marriage, both somewhat in the beginning and in the end, right, which matters, um, like fell flat to you there. Is that what you're saying?
yes,
I
I
think
don't
that's what
think
you're
you
saying.
can do both. I think you either have it to where we know she's married, but she's not going to be punished, which means we're going to literally cut out the scene where these two confront each other, or maybe even we have that scene, but she's not there for it. Her being in the center of that scene makes no sense to me, because is she only there to break up the physical fight? No, she's there so that we can see her husband's reaction towards her, the way that he reacts to her. That is the quote unquote punishment. But it feels like, if we don't want to punish her, having her be yelled at by her husband and called names by her husband is punishing her. It just isn't punishing her to the extent that we would normally see a woman who is caught cheating be punished in a movie. And so it felt like a half measure to me.
Now I understand you, but I still like fully disagree, right? And I'll frame the question a little differently, but at least now I understand. I think it's the marriage part that got you. Okay, okay. I still disagree fully. I think they did it perfectly. I think showing us that it could have possibly happened. I think her being there during the very awkward blow up. And I think awkwardness is something that was like this like undertone of anxiety and unsettled, like, and weirdness throughout the entire movie. It was never actually too sexual to me, and maybe I'm just a deviant, but it was never too sexual to me. It was just like, hmm, are they gonna get caught? That's all like I felt the entire Baby Girl movie was like, are they gonna get caught? Like I wasn't it didn't feel like there was anything to be punished for or anything too nasty, too sexy. And it's probably because we couldn't sandwich it between violence like Nosferatu. Nosferatu was a much sexier film, truly. But I think Baby Girl worked so well in kind of pretending that something might have happened, seeing everyone's human reactions, and then her kind of just like still having her marriage, her job, and a bunch of power at the end. Like, I kind of liked it. Edwin, what do you think? I saw your hand up earlier.
Well, I would plan this. I was planning to see Baby Girl, but I had to give up my car to my for my dad to go to work.
Okay.
So it was gonna be a 10 a.m. matinee. So I was like, damn.
Well,
But
when you watch it, let us know and hashtag what we watch. But go ahead.
but it feels like with Baby Girl, it's like the opposite of Fatal Attraction, the film with Michael
Douglas.
Oh, we're aware. Yeah.
Michael Douglas,
Michael
Yeah.
Douglas and
Ellen,
Glenn Close,
Close.
Glenn
Glenn
Close,
Close.
yeah. So it's like the total opposite of like when it's like, oh, like he's a married man. He's like he's very handsome. He has like the life that every
Right.
American wants with the house and kids and the dog. It just he meets this woman who's like very attractive. Like Glenn Close is like smoking on screen, and it's just like they get this like attraction with each other that's like so taboo, and like he still goes along with it. And even when she shows her emotions, is like, "Can we be together?" He's like, "No, like I'm married." It's like this cannot work out. And then like that the it was for the time that it was in like the 80s.
Yeah.
She gets punished. Then like oh they make her crazy, and is like oh like she's doing like these terrible things to the family. So it's like at the time it's
Yeah.
just like they're being more mean to her. Like once the turn happens in the movie, and so it sounds like with Baby Girl it's like things have like changed so dramatically that is like we're seeing Nicole Kidman. So shout out to her. She's actually doing the work, working with women directors.
Yeah,
Not
for
she's
real.
really doing the thing. So like
I
with
heard
this, it's
someone
like
say that we're oversaturated with Nicole Kidman stuff. I said, excuse me.
not
I
enough.
don't agree with that at all.
I said, excuse me. You will not be comfortable.
Keep
She's a
hiring
great
her.
actress. She's great.
Yeah. I said, let's calm it down. All right. But keep going, please, because it's giving the older women centered.
Baby Girl is 20% better if it was Fatal Attraction.
I
It's
want to
20%
be the
better.
baby girl. That is the patriarchy speaking. I rebuke it, TJ.
No, not because of the punishment aspect, just because Fatal Attraction. I feel like Baby Girl does not have stakes at the center of it. That
Oh,
really bothers me.
that's the patriarchy speaking.
I don't agree with that. I don't think that's a fair criticism. I don't think it has anything to do with the mores of the movie. It's about the script, like how the movie is written. Like Baby Girl needs stakes. Like if her family is in her job, a plot point of this movie is not only that her family is on the line, but her job is on the line. That is in the text. That is in the script. Her job is
And
on the
you
line. She's being threatened by people at her job
did you not
because
feel that the entire movie? You just didn't get
no,
the
I
payoff at the
didn't
end.
because I never did. That's my issue.
No,
That's
you
literally my
definitely did.
issue. I never felt like her job or her family was ever really on the line, and I'm fine with her being able to have a romp, but I don't like introducing the stakes that end up being fake at the end. That frustrated me.
You're not. No, you're not being
If
honest.
it's a
The
romp, if
entire
she just
time,
walked
you're
doing
like,
being Baby Girl,
she's
I'm
having
fine with
sex
that.
with her intern. If you can't accept that as like a thing that in 2024, 2020, when the movie came out, we're in 2025 now. Like, what more do I have to say? In the news right now, in all kinds of stuff right now, you have sex with a subordinate, you are done. That is inappropriate. That comes out about any of you in this right now. What more stakes do you
But she
need?
wasn't actually done. You're making my point
But
for
that
me.
was because at the end of the movie she didn't pay any punitive like damages or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But throughout the entire movie, I mean the marketing just I think the marketing just kind of frustrated a lot of men because it gave very horny, very much she's gonna like pay for the stuff that she does. Very much the intern is going to have to suffer in some way. And it was really just a movie that was like, hey, like on paper, all of this sounds really bad. And if this happened to any of you, it could be really bad. But what if you like just both the movie to me is more about consent. Whereas Nosferatu is like, I don't give a fuck about consent. You are my affliction. Come to me. You were never supposed to marry. That was not a part of our contract. How dare you think that you can go? Like, there was no consent in Nosferatu. Zero, zero, zero. There was zero consent, whereas Baby Girl, there was this constant check in, like, no, we can't do this. I'm older than you. I'm going to hurt you. I'm older than you. I'm going to hurt you. And he's like, bro, I have the power. So it was a different power play. And to me, the entire movie was just like, what if on paper and there could be a lawsuit and this could be, inappropriate in the workplace, but what if we both just want this and no one says anything? And maybe you don't like that, but
I,
I'm okay with it. What happens if we just want to have sex and we want to do weird things and you want to fulfill me and I'm cheating on my husband and I feel guilty for a little bit, but Antonio Banderas is one of the sexiest older men alive and our marriage is going to be okay? Like, I understand. I don't think it's the best movie ever, but I just think it introduces something that we've never seen on screen, and that's why people don't buy into it. And so it's going to be hard because until we see more women in power, in sex, which was also challenged in Baby Girl, until we see more of that, this is going to feel weird to me. And especially if we don't punish the woman in power, this is going to feel weird to me. Now, that's how I feel a lot of men have taken back from it. It wasn't sexy enough, there wasn't enough punishment. It was just, oh, let's talk about consent. Which, if you get consent, maybe you're not like that
Hey,
moved by it.
I guess my thing was, listen, it was good. I don't think it was great. And by the way, Fatal Attraction to me, now that's a film because I
What
was
film?
there that first week and
Fatal
seen that.
Attraction. Got it.
And that movie, I'm telling you, stunned everybody. That's how good it was, how good Douglas was. It was just
Why?
fun.
Okay. Why, Cheech and Mike? Why was Fatal Attraction good? One sentence. Why was
because
Fatal Attraction so
writing,
stunning?
writing, writing, script, writing, script, writing. That's
That's a
why it's
cop
good.
out. What
That's
about the
not a
movie
cop out.
made it
I don't
so
I
stunning?
don't think it's fair that you reject my criticism or
It just
want my
kept you on the
criticism
edge of
under.
your seat because you didn't know what the hell was going to happen.
Okay.
Because Glenn Close was an absolute maniac, right? And didn't they change the ending of that film where,
Yes, they did.
right, where they, where she came out of the tub and he shot her? Didn't she come out and stab or something? Who was the woman that played his wife again? What was her name in the Michael Douglas's wife in the film? I forget her name. Oh my
I got.
god.
I'll look it
Anyhow,
up.
but I think she kill her originally or she stabbed her, but they changed the word. No, we gotta have Glenn Close die. Because the audiences hated that Glenn Close wasn't dead in this film and she was at the end, but
Sh-
it just kept you on the edge of your seat. It was just a
Okay.
hell of a film. I mean, from start to end.
And Baby Girl did not. Teach, talk to me.
Good, but I
Okay.
couldn't. My problem was I couldn't get away from the fact. Okay, she was the CEO, right?
Uh huh.
And he's such a schlub intern. I mean, I'm trying to see the attraction. And Glenn,
Okay.
look at Nicole,
That
and
is
I
fair.
get it. He's young, but
Teach
is
did
she
not
really
say
going to
something
risk
about
everything
that.
for some intern?
I, I agree. That I
I
agree with.
did. I can buy it as much, and I
I
get
agree
the
with it.
whole
I'm
thing.
okay with
Can
that.
we make him like a middle manager at least, like a supervisor, maybe, like a
I get that.
sees a
I get.
guy that I didn't. I had a hard time buying, but
Okay.
so
Okay.
that was my thing.
I
If
don't mean to
that's
interrupt. So the original ending was the Glenn Close character would have committed suicide,
Okay,
and
versus homicide.
so audiences didn't like it because it felt like it wasn't the proper punishment. It's like she was like, oh, she copped
thanks,
out
Evelyn.
herself,
Yeah,
and
I
it
knew it
was
was
and
something
Archer,
different.
who was
Yeah,
Michael Douglas's wife in the movie.
and Archer. Thank you.
Yeah.
So teach
Yeah.
talk to us about the difference in writing in Fatal Attraction and Baby Girl. Obviously there's so many differences,
Well,
but what was your issue? What do you want to
okay,
talk
I
about?
want to make my position clear. I think you keep on saying that I wanted punishment. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Baby Girl is a better movie if either A, we don't spend half the movie building up towards what happens when it all falls apart, or B, we have the story where you build up to where it all falls apart and then it all falls apart. I think both of those are better movies than Baby Girl. Both of them. If there's literally no stakes and she's allowed to fuck all her employees and we're just exploring her kinks and watching her explore herself and watching her learn what she's into, what she lacks in her sex life, what she likes, that is a 20% better movie on its face without having to deal with the fact that she's married or that she's the CEO of the company. So I'm not saying that they should have punished her. What I'm saying is we spent X amount of screen time building up the family aspect and the corporate aspect, which makes perfect sense because we understand the context in which the movie was set. To
Okay,
only get to the end and it's just like hand wave it. That to me, that felt lazy in the writing. When you're watching Fatal Attraction, it feels like obviously Fatal Attraction, the politics of Fatal Attraction are much worse than the politics of Baby Girl. So we cannot compare the two movies if we're thinking
I
about
agree.
which
I would
movie
have
has
never
the
made the
best number
comparison.
of messaging. But if we're just
Yes,
talking
I agree.
about the film and its enjoyability, what makes Fatal Attraction much more enjoyable than Baby Girl is because Baby Girl doesn't take you anywhere that you don't expect to go when you watch the trailer. The only surprise in Baby Girl is that she isn't punished, which isn't really a surprise in 2025 and 2024. If a woman is making a movie about the sex life of a woman, it's not a surprise that she's not going to be treated like the Glenn Close character because it's from a woman's perspective. She's probably less likely to write the Glenn Close character as a crazy maniac who's sex crazed and can't control her own emotions. So that's not surprising that you walk into Baby Girl and you get the movie that you got. When you walk into Fatal Attraction, you know that there's a fatal attraction, and the word fatal is literally in the movie. But the way that it plays out, when she puts that bunny in that pot, you don't see that coming. That is not something that you expected when you sat down. And that kind of, oh shit, what the fuck is going on now?
Hmm.
It's crazy. And
You didn't
also,
get that in Baby Girl, really.
the characters in Fatal Attraction are much more flat, which isn't a good thing, but it makes the movie easier to navigate. So what nobody remembers about Fatal Attraction is Michael Douglas made 97 horrible decisions in the movie, and not just a decision to cheat. Lots of people make that decision, but everything he did after he started to cheat was the worst possible decision. It was just like when me and Monique were watching Nosferatu, every decision that Nicholas Holt's character made, we were like, why would you continue to go to this castle? You've
Oh
seen
my god.
seven scary things. 90 people in the village told you, do not take your ass up there. There's a vampire up there. We don't even speak the name of that dude around here. And he's still like, I'm gonna take my happy ass
I'm
up
gonna
there.
I'm gonna go sell this house.
Like he's just like he will not listen.
You don't
He's
listen.
being told the universe is telling this man you're having dreams where you're fucking outside in the woods and then you wake up from your bed and your feet are dirty. Like everything is telling you don't go up there, and he goes up there. That's what Michael Douglas is doing in Fatal Attraction. Everything is telling him don't do this, end this, don't continue this, handle this differently, and he just makes a million bad decisions, which is not better writing, but it makes the movie easier to like shock you because
Yes.
we're just trying to get you to the scene that we really want you to see, which is she's gonna take that bunny, she's gonna do some crazy shit with that bunny, and that's what they want to leave you with.
And I fully agree. Like this is what we watch. Happy what we watch Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. Why is sex taboo? On screen and off screen, online and offline. I'm glad because fatal attraction being injected into this conversation is very important to me. I love that, but I would never compare it to Baby Girl. To me, we don't even need to talk about those two movies. Nosferatu is a much closer comparison to me, but still not a comparison. Not anything I would compare it to. But I see the through line on a very high level of like cheating and sex and death. So fine, but I think Tej hit on a perfect note with Nosferatu, which is like decision making. And I wonder if because Baby Girl, and I said this earlier today, literally before this, with a completely separate person who I talk about film with and some of my clients, they were a little bit concerned about what decisions were made because of what they were marketed. And Tej, in your description of the criticism, you also talked about the trailer. So I hung on to that word too. Marketing is an interesting thing these days, guys, and I think that goes perfectly with sex. Tej, you kind of mentioned that nothing that wasn't marketed didn't happen. And, while I take pause with the comment on surprise, I watch everything all the time and still haven't seen everything that I can and want to. And very little stuff surprises me. So I don't use that as a barometer for what's good, great, or not so great, or just not made for me. However, I know that most people kind of look to say, hey, how can you shock me? How can you write something that I didn't see coming? Because that can, like, really, really elevate the experience. I even write stuff and I'm like, ooh, people are not going to see this coming. I'm going to take them this way. I'm going to M. Night Shyamalan this way. I'm going to Gone Girl this way. And it's going to be like a thing, right? But Baby Girl maybe didn't do that. And I wonder if people wanted that. I loved Baby Girl. I loved Baby Girl because it was like, to me, you could do Baby Girl as a movie in one day. It was very much very human, very 2024, 2025. Girl likes boy, boy likes girl. Weird power dynamics, weird flirting, weird kinks, weird shame, weird vulnerability. We shouldn't be doing this. The movie is just we shouldn't be doing this. And that could all have happened in one day. And I really like that. I like that this is just an entire movie of, oh gosh, I really like this thing, but my husband won't do it for me. Will you do it for me? I like that. I like that the intern was like, it wasn't too sexual, and I think it was marketed as, ooh, there's gonna be something that happens and we're gonna go down this path and she's gonna get exposed, right? And whether that's punishment or not, I get that there might have been like a desire for some sort of exposure in a different way. And we got the exposure. We figured out that baby girl had a little bit of shame, but not really. And the intern was just like, Mike, kind of to your point, he's just an intern that like ended up with another woman anyway. Sorry for all the spoilers, guys. This is what we watch. But it's one of those things where I can see that this is unlike any other movie. In any other movie, something different happens to Nicole Kidman's character and the guy. And I agree. It shouldn't be, an intern, right? The movie changes drastically, though, if it's a middle manager and the CEO, somewhere where they're in the room a lot during work, right?
True.
The movie doesn't work as much for like our usual experiences on screen because it's not Succession where like Roman is fucking Jerry. Like it's not that, which is like insane. He's accidentally sending dick pics to his dad. Like they get it. They get like that's tension, that's high stakes, that's, oh my gosh, if this relationship falls flat, everything could crumble. Whereas baby girl, it's like everything's okay. Let's just think about things while we watch this movie. And I don't know, I was okay with it. Nosferatu did not allow me to think about things too much. I was very much watching, learning, experiencing, terrified out of my mind. But Tej, I wanted to specifically talk about shame one more time because I think if we wrap this space up, I think shame is a lot of why sex is taboo. And when we think of shame, and I want everybody that's on the stage to talk to me about like what we associate sex and how we associate sex and shame, and just think about that for a little bit. But in Nosferatu and Baby Girl, without shame, these movies look very different without shame specifically of the woman characters. And as a founder and a producer and a filmmaker that never wants to put like female in front of it, I think it's important that we designate that because there is a difference with marginalized peoples and groups and ethnicities and genders and things like that when we're experiencing art in real life or on screen. And what I mean to say is that there is something to be said that these time periods of these films are probably centuries apart, but there's still a lot of shame focused in on the women specifically. Okay. The Lily-Rose Depp's character and Nicole Kidman's character struggle with shame and turmoil simply in their desires, right? Nosferatu's baby girl is struggling with the fact that she enjoyed seeing death. She enjoys meeting Count Orlok in her dreams and in her whatever, astral projections, whatever you want to call it, right? She felt happy in just this darkness and death and disgust. Baby girl, Nicole Kidman's character was like, I don't want my husband to like judge me, right? Shame. I don't want my husband to judge me for this nastiness. The fact that I can't orgasm with him. The fact that this young random intern that I saw do something with a dog, like it just turned me on out of my mind. And so it's these like this baseline of shame immediately associated with your desire as a woman. And we have to have those conversations. So, Tej, what do you think about shame specifically in women? Because let's be very, very honest. In Nosferatu and Baby Girl, Count Orlok has no shame. Can we agree? Let's just first agree there.
We can agree with that. And
There's no
also,
shame. There's no shame.
baby boy has no shame either.
Baby boy has no shame. So, what is shame in these sexual, interactions and quite frankly transactions? And why don't we see it in men?
Well, because I think that one, people do not make movies about men's sexual shame unless that sexual shame is like base level, like being unable to perform. Like you have movies about men who are unable to perform in the way that they want to or please their partner, and there's shame in that. But shame in like just like shame in what you like, or like Baby Girl, a lot of her shame is based specifically on like this is what turns me on. And I'm
Yep.
ashamed of what turns me on. And I don't want to be a person who's turned on by these things, but I can't help what I like. And that
Because
is
how
her
many
shame.
times at the beginning of the movie did I say, why doesn't she just tell him? Right?
Yeah,
I
like
was like, why
there's
won't she
shame
just
around
tell him?
that. And then she tries to kind of work into it like a bait, like a very small bite of the things that she really wants to do, and he's just not fucking with it, right? So
Yeah.
that makes her feel more shame and unseen, and now she doesn't want to go open the full bag because I gave you a little piece of the bag and you weren't fucking with it. So if you're gonna reject that, I'm just not gonna show you what I really want. So, and she's got shame, and I think it's like both of those things. One, what the husband is willing to do, but also two, it feels like there's some just shame just generally about what she's into, whether or not her husband was able to give it to her or not.
Right.
And that is the patriarchy, because that is a
Yep.
woman who's been taught that this is what a woman should want or desire, but my wants or desires don't necessarily align with what I'm taught. And so now I feel like a deviant. And now I feel like I'm broken and there's something wrong with me.
Take
There's
us right
something.
into Nosferatu with that.
Yes. The same thing with there's literally a Lily-Rose Depp monologue about I've had this with me forever. I'm not like other women. I have these wants, these desires that make me different, right?
He fulfills them.
And not different in a way that's like difference is fine. Difference in a way that makes me other, that makes me less than, that makes me feel like I'm not the person that I should be or want to be.
Right.
And that is obviously a current a through line through both of the films. And it's so interesting seeing that again. We can't really leave out the fact that Baby Girl is directed by a woman and Nosferatu is directed by a man.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
you see those, like we're touching on the same things, but we touch on them so differently because one is from the perspective of a woman and one is from the perspective of a man who's putting these things up. Not to say that Nosferatu did not have women involved with it. Obviously, a woman's doing the performance. A woman might be involved in every part of the creation process, but the vision is the vision of a man. So yeah, I see those differences in how a woman's shame is presented on screen, and I just took note of the fact that a man is showing us why this woman feels the shame that she feels, and never quite even get. I mean, maybe it's because he's a monster, but I mean, we don't even touch on Orlok having any shame. You don't have any shame or morals or nothing like that.
Right. And I think it's not lost on me either, with the gendered shame that like I forget our guy's best friend, our rich best his rich bestie, he has a wife that he's absolutely obsessed with. So that was like a very good like juxtaposition of a healthy sexual relationship. They both like just desire each other so much. There's no cheating. They can't stop getting impregnate, and he can't stop impregnating her. They have a bunch of girls. Oh my gosh, now I'm gonna have a boy, but I die before I have the boy. So there was a lot of like intentionality, I think, in like developing the characters around Lily-Rose Depp and is it Nicholas Holt? And Nicholas Holt's like relationship, and then of course
We didn't
Nosferatu.
even talk about their sex scene and how, what that means about a woman's desire.
Exactly. And so, I think about, you talk about necrophilia. I wonder how that works, right? Like, will we ever on screen see a woman have sex with a corpse? Probably not.
Never.
But right. And this matters, right? This matters. This speaks to art representing life or life imitating art, whatever you want to think. But that scene in Nosferatu where he does that, I'm thinking there should be more shame. And we rush to make sure there's no shame. If you remember, Nicholas Holt's character is like, oh, let's quietly put this away. So there's like this like understanding of shame, but he's not publicly shamed. No one sees him, no one finds him. It's just like he's okay. He had sex with his dead wife. That's okay. Let's move it on. Let's burn this up. We have bigger fish to fry, which is this guy's bringing the bubonic plague or whatever kind of plague it is. And, I don't know. I made that up. But, and Nosferatu is our focus. To me, there's nothing bigger. There's no bigger, like, evidence of shame in this movie than the fact that she had to die for this to end. And the way that she died, I won't spoil, but she had to die for this to end, right? I'm not spoiling the movie. The way she dies is beautiful, and you'll be fine. The journey is absolutely incredible, but you get what I'm saying? Like, I think you were both hitting on it. Like, there's something to be said about the fact that sex is so taboo, right? And I wonder specifically heterosexual sex, but there's no shame. The men don't experience any shame with sex on screen. Can anyone think of a movie where a man
Okay,
is shamed in
I
sex?
got, you guys were talking about men being shamed on screen, but I thought of one. And when I first saw the Afro Baby Girl, I thought it reminded me. Okay, what was the Jeremy Irons film where he had an affair with his daughter-in-law or something like that? You remember that film where he just went nuts and started seeing her, and we can't see each other. Then they got out, and he lost everything in that film. It was a brilliant film. I forget the damn name of it. You know what I'm talking
Damage.
about? Damage. Okay, that film, sick, right? He was it was complete shame,
Okay.
complete shame, and
I
it's
need to watch that. I need to watch
yeah,
how
right. Who's
men
ever
get
seen
shamed on
Damage?
screen.
Yeah. Oh my god. And I thought
Robert,
this film, when I saw the odds, is going to go that way too. She's going to lose her husband, lose her kids. She has a powerful job. No, I didn't realize. No, it's none of that kind
did
of stuff.
that
No.
bother you? Be honest. Did that bother you that she didn't pay the price?
Yeah, well, I just expected that was going to happen. It's
Yeah.
like it's all right. I mean, maybe that's what I walked out there going. All right, well, she didn't lose anything. She had her husband. He's going to do different stuff to her now. It's like she
No
got
one
what she
likes the
wanted. It's
happy
all
ending.
right.
What's going on? I mean,
Yeah,
whatever. Like,
yeah, it
I'm
is.
not gonna
I
go
Yeah,
like
there.
the happy ending for the black girl. I thought she got the ending that she deserved. Turn her.
See, great movie. Come on, Helena. Thank you. Give the black girl a great.
oh,
Robert, as a
funny.
filmmaker, how do you like kind of, include shame in some of your characters there? Because, I'm just going to say it here at What We Watch. I think we've realized, especially with sex being so taboo, that shame is a great tool to use on screen because as audience members, we know what that is. Like, you don't even have the word shame is not in either of these movies, but we know it exists, right? We know it's there because of what might happen. We know it's there because people are hiding things. We know it's there because, Lily-Rose Depp is crying and like convulsing, trying to talk about this relationship that she has with this otherworldly being that's on its way to her. Like, so Robert, how do you like, what do you think about shame on screen and in these stories?
Shame is a very powerful emotion because it's something that we've all felt at one point or another in our lives. It may not be the same situation, but that feeling of shame, that feeling of guilt, that feeling of, man, I really just, it's just it's a feeling that's powerful that if you can do it in a way where it just connects with everybody, it's something that we've all felt. Like we've all felt at times happy or joy, but it's one of those primal emotions that we've all felt because of one way or another we felt shame because of we've gone against what we've been taught, what we've learned, what we've been brought up to believe. And we've gone against those codes, and now we feel shame and guilt because of that. So I believe it's one of those things where it's a very powerful emotion that you can connect with an audience to.
Yeah, that I like the term code. Whose code, right? And what code? And we could talk for another hour. I know we have to wrap this up, but like, what is the code? Robert, what's the code? What like is it just does it just matter based on like the universe that we're thrown into? The shame looks different in Nosferatu versus Baby Girl, but really the way me and Tej and Mike just talked about it, it's the exact same. What do you think?
I think the code is more based off of our own experiences and our own upbringings and our own morals. And
Heck
that's
yeah.
how we take it into these movies and these films. We take our own
Yes.
experiences into these universes. And so that code is based off of how we feel, how we've been
Yes.
brought up, what we believe. And so I just believe that's the code, whatever you believe in. And if it's going against that typical code that you have, then you can relate to that type of guilt and shame because it went against something that you believe in.
And I think, and I don't say this in judgment or anything, I just say this very matter of fact and observation. I think humans are so contradictory in their code, right? I think being on Twitter for so long, I've realized that it really is just like, do you like the person or not? Right? Because a lot of times I think introspection is something that a lot of people don't want to do or be accountable for, but film almost forces us to do it. There's no escaping to your point, right, Robert? Like the code that you're watching Baby Girl with is if you would ever do it, Would you feel shame? Would your family or friends or your coworkers, how would they feel if you had sex with one of your interns, right? Not even if, but I'm sure that someone that has done the thing that they saw on Baby Girl, they probably would not feel the same way about the movie that we do. Or maybe they would, you know? And I like that you said that. The code is really you going in with your experiences, your background, your feelings. And that's exactly why What We Watch was built. I remember, in 2020 when we were all locked up, I just saw everyone's feelings and everyone's projections and everyone's understanding of the shows that were coming out really just reflected how they felt. They always injected their experiences into everything we saw on screen. And I was like, huh, maybe we should like come together as a community and talk about this. Tej, what do you think?
First of all, I thought of another version of male sex shame, kind of, I guess. The episode of Black Mirror where they got the people to comply with whatever they wanted to because they took pictures from their laptops or their phones of them jerking off. So the main character gets caught jerking off, and they show him we have pictures of you jerking off, and that leads the shame of it being caught in that moment leads him to do make the worst decision possible because of so he wants to avoid the shame of this getting out in public. Anyway, uh, I, 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 I I don't know. I got to think about your question a little bit more. I
Yeah.
have conflicted thoughts.
Edwin, go ahead.
If the, since we're talking about shame, I highly recommend Steve McQueen's film. It's the title is literally named Shame.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie. I saw it like really young, like in my like right after high school, early 20s. So I didn't really understand it too much. But I would actually plan to go back and watch it. And again, it's basically Michael Fassbender dealing with sexual addiction. Like he
Ooh.
has everything, and he's really deep into having multiple partners and also deep into pornography. And then his sister Michelle Williams comes back, and he feels shame just having her back in
Oh,
his life. So
then
it's
let's do a double feature of Shame and Don John, is it called? With Scarlett Johansson and my
yeah,
Oh,
JGL. There's shame there. Huh?
yeah.
It's
There's a
interesting.
lot of shame in that.
It's interesting. Now I found another theme that there's only shame if a man is trying to pleasure himself without the presence of a woman.
see.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So there's shame in
So we have to write a script based on shame centered around pegging. That's what you're saying. That's what we're missing.
Oh my god.
That's what
please
we're missing.
someone. Now who's directing that movie? Not Miss Petrino, guys. I'm not
Miss
doing
Peacherino is making the male shame peg movie. That is happening.
I will say, as
Um,
a filmmaker, one of my main themes will definitely be punitive things against men and women being villains very comfortably. Okay, enough of the opposite. I get so bored with someone cheating on someone and being sad. No disrespect. I think cheating is the worst. I think it is very, very harmful. That being said, let's have the women do some cheating, all right? And
And be comfortable with the cheating. That's fun. Turn
no
that up.
shame. And let's have the moment where they face the fact that she's cheating, and let's not do all the extra stuff. Let's not have him pretend he's not hurt. Let's not have him even maybe take her back. Let's let it
Let
explode.
let's have her say, I mean, you could have joined us if you wanted to, but you didn't ask, and that's the end of the scene.
Exactly.
End of
You could
scene.
say, you should have been doing the dishes. I wish you would do the dishes more and cook
Well,
more.
if you were making me like baby girl and touching me how I like to be touched, I wouldn't have to go outside the house.
I
So really,
wouldn't
this is
have
your
to.
fault. End scene.
And see, like that's we're gonna inject that obviously. Teach, you're so funny. Like obvious, but I want women to be just as shocking and evil as we're so comfortably showing men, right? Like what if Nosferatu was a woman, bro? Like that's crazy. If Nosferatu is a girl, like the
That's a
whole
very different movie.
it's a very different movie, and it's okay that we like can say that. Like it shouldn't be equality and feminism and womanism, sure, but like the way that our brains work and our codes and how we've been raised in America, like Nosferatu is very different if it's a woman. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so I got another subject I want to bring up since we're talking about sex being taboo in films. But one thing that I think we lack a real understanding with in actual films is intimacy. You don't see intimacy. You see sex as portrayed as intimacy because it's an act of intimacy, but it's not the only form of intimacy. And I think when we get a better understanding what actual true intimacy is, I think the sex scenes in movies will actually be better because there's that foundation of intimacy that is lacking. And I think one of the best portrayals of intimacy in a film, funny enough, came from a boxing movie, came from Creed. When Bianca and Adonis was taking out her braids and they were just sitting there talking. It was a very intimate moment. But it's something like that. You don't see stuff like that, where that intimacy shines. I think once you get more of that intimacy that's actually like that in films, I think the sex scenes will shine off of that.
I fully agree. Number one, I fully agree. That being said, I think and maybe it's because I've always longed for it, so I hold on to it. Maybe I just have a grandiose perspective of like how much intimacy we get on screen and how great it is. But Robert, with I'd say within the last like 3, 4 years, I'm seeing a lot of intimacy without sex. I'm seeing a significant improvement. I'm seeing a significant uptick in like understanding intimacy. Cough, cough, wicked. Period. End of discussion. I'm seeing more of like, what if we do this and we don't have sex? What if we show the complications of intimacy? TV does it very well. But I think if we go straight into film, which you got 1 to 3 hours to kind of do it, 2 to 3 hours to kind of do it, I think it gets more difficult. But a lot of intimacy scenes stick out to me over the last 3 to 5 years. Tej, what do you think? And to me, it's interesting that you say true intimacy. Um, I think that also is reflective of like whatever you think intimacy is, right? I think really what we're all going to agree on right now, to your point, Robert, is that intimacy does not have to include sex, the act of sex. But intimacy looks different for everyone. Sometimes it doesn't feel intimate for you to braid my hair, but maybe it feels intimate for you to bring me a cup of tea and rub my back. Maybe intimacy is you listening to me talk about my favorite thing for an hour and a half. Maybe intimacy is just us looking at each other and, joking or banter or whatever it is. Like intimacy is so different, right? But when you see it on screen, what also had a lot of intimacy and people were mad because there wasn't enough sex? Twisters. There was a lot of intimacy there. We're
Oh
in the
yeah,
middle of
no,
a, what'd you say?
no, that's a very good point. Twisters was a very
Forget
good
about
example of
sex.
that.
They didn't even kiss.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go, guys.
Hey, you can thank Steven Spielberg for that one. He was the one who told them
Yes,
not to have them
Spielberg, come
kiss.
off it, bro. Come on. What the
Please,
fuck are
Steve.
we doing?
You know what? That is contradictory to the entire space. You're right. Please, more sex, more sex. Tej,
Thank you.
what do you think about intimacy on screen? I'm glad you said it, Robert, because it's true. Like sex is an act of intimacy, but there are other acts and there are other ways to inject that intimacy. I think intimacy also people think immediately like romantic, heterosexual. And I don't think that's always the case. I think it can be platonic intimacy. I think it can be, homosexual intimacy. I think it can be a lot, it's very layered. And I think it is interesting that, a lot of us feel like there's not enough of it. I feel like there's plenty, but maybe I just watch too much stuff. What do you think, Ryan?
My favorite form of intimacy is when we have two characters that are both going through either their own separate trials and tribulations or
Mhm.
a combined trial or tribulation, and they just kind of let them be in silent. Because like that is a form of intimacy that I personally like in my own life. So I'm around someone, and we can just be quiet and we can just be focused on whatever we're focused on, but we're still sharing that time. And I
Yeah,
like that in movies because it feels very reflective of, especially when you're talking about two people that are in a relationship.
right.
I think about close, even though you're dealing with like kids, like the way they're able to,
Oh,
they don't
God.
show these kids having sex ever,
Oh,
but the
I
way they're
love that
able to
movie.
show intimacy of these two characters and the bond between these two characters is beautiful. And I think it gets to the original point, which is some of the most intimate shit that you'll ever see on screen has nothing to do with sex. It could be characters that
Wicked.
are having sex, but when you feel their level of intimacy, it's easier to show intimacy in forms that are other than sex because we're so used to that being the way that we're shown. When two people get together in a movie, go back to the '90s, the next thing you know, they're having sex. the bed's rocking. That means like, okay, we're here. But it's like there are other ways of showing intimacy, and I think Close is a great example of showing
Oh,
that intimacy in a way that is non-sexual at all, but shows tells you everything you need to know about the way these two characters feel about each other.
I'm so glad you love that movie the way I did. I think we watched it together. What I'm obsessed with that movie. Everyone in this chat needs to go watch Close. Came out 2022. It's about these two young boys that like struggle with their feelings for each other. It is one of the most beautiful films. Like I'm getting chills just thinking about it. If I inject the conversation and Diner in the I don't know the last part. Did you want to say something real quick before I tie it all in?
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Um, well, not to like change the subject or anything, but I was thinking about platonic relationships of people who are like maybe attracted to each other that we've seen on film,
Yeah.
and there's not many
Teej
of
likes to call this
people
the
that
will
like
they or won't they.
keep it platonic for a long time.
I can think of one that kept it platonic for a long
Wait, now,
time. Never
now
went.
the stipulation is that they have to both be very attractive people, so that we assume they're
Yes,
attracted to each other.
yes.
Ooh, I can't think of one. Monique, you have one?
There's a lot. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of times they tried, but then the film writers were like, no, they have to have sex now. So
That's true. The
So,
studio notes would be like, okay, love this. Where's the sex scene? Where's the kiss? Where do they get together?
so
yeah,
industry HBO, plugging my guy Mickey Down and Connor McKay, obviously, but
Oh,
shout
that's
out
a good
to Mickey Down. Hey, um, industry HBO has a very like I don't know if it's platonic, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is platonic until it isn't. But at least for like 2 seasons, Yasmin and Robert, I believe, were just like
No, that does not count.
I think it does.
That does not count. They were playing sex games with each other. He was jacking off for her, and there's no they. Those
At
people were
least
doing
for
sexy stuff. They just weren't having sex.
He ate his own
okay,
nut in front of her. It was
Yeah, he
crazy.
ate his nut
okay,
in
he
front
did.
of her. That's
Okay,
come
fine.
on.
For at least one season though, that they were like, okay, fine, okay, maybe that wasn't too platonic. You're
He
right.
eats his own nut with her in season one. This doesn't count.
You're right. Okay, you know what? You're right. You're right. Okay, fine. I was just thinking that when we actually got to like the sexual act, you're right though, but there were sexual things that they did before the penetration.
I can't think of one. There has to be some
before
though.
the
No, there is one.
penetration.
Oh, I got one. I got one. No, I guess that doesn't. I was gonna say Batman and Catwoman. Zoe Saldana Catwoman, but they like they're building that still. That's going to happen. Like that doesn't count.
Chad is in the chat. Give us a platonic intimacy. There is one. I remember people talking about it. I think it's a white show. I think it's a white show though, where they were like, "Dang,
Not
they."
the show Platonic because neither one of them are hot enough. No disrespect.
You
Well,
know,
we were
that's
talking
fine.
about super good looking people. Not that they're not good
I
looking,
don't
but
like that stipulation
oh, well, I think it's easy if you take that
because
off.
then I can't say anybody because Twister. That's right.
Well, most people are very attracted to Glenn Powell, so you don't get to just because you are not. I guess that is subjective, but most people find Glenn
Glenn
Powell very
Powell.
attractive.
I think you're a great guy. I think you're a great looking guy.
So you would be his lead, and y'all would have a totally platonic hangout and adventure where you wouldn't even try that man once, and
I
he wouldn't try
think
you.
Glenn Powell, in a room full of smart people,
Yo, I
he's
would
the
try
hot one,
Glenn
and
Powell.
in a
I would.
room full of hot people, he's the smart one. It's the most perfect tweet ever about Glenn Powell. Okay, that's it.
Except for most people think he'd also be the hot one. Not you though. I understand you don't feel that way.
I just think
Not
that
only for TV or movies too.
see, and for film, it's nearly impossible to do that because they're almost always going to make them do a
Yeah,
scene.
yeah.
But TV and film,
Blade, Blade.
Ooh, Blade's
okay.
a good one.
See, I
But
knew you'd have it because
that seems like a script note. They didn't want him to seem oversexed. That's a script note.
well, that's fine. It's still
Well,
the
that's true. It's still what's rendered, but
They
that's
didn't
a
want him
script
to
note.
seem oversexed, but he sucked her blood out so passionately.
all right, man. I think that if I can't get Yasmin and Robert, then that doesn't count either. Then
You damn sure can't get Yasmin and Robert.
they were platonic for long enough without like sexual
When
stuff.
you eat your nut for someone, not that I've ever done such a thing. That's not platonic. That's not platonic by any sense of the definition.
I
I
think
thought
that
of Harry and Hermione and Harry Potter, The Deathly Hallows Part 1.
That's not fair. They get married eventually.
no, they don't.
No, he
He
doesn't marry
marries
Harry.
Ginny.
She
He
doesn't marry
marries
Harry.
Ginny.
She marries Ron.
Yeah,
Oh,
she
that's right. She
marries
marries
Ron.
Ron.
Harry marries Ginny.
Okay, that's good. That's
Um,
good
that doesn't work for me though because
because they're not good looking enough.
no,
What?
yes and no.
No, those
What-
kids were attractive as fuck.
See, Tej, you inserted a real issue with this. Remove attraction. It's far too subjective. Most men be ugly.
That's Will Smith and Margaret Robbie. Margaret Rob. God
Margot
dang it.
Robbie in Focus,
No,
Oh,
in
that's a good
Suicide
one.
Squad.
in Suicide Squad. Ooh, action films always. That's what I was thinking. Zoe Saldana, and Guardians of the
I'm talking about
Galaxy.
they kiss and stuff. They're dating.
I know, but they're dating. But in one of the movies, doesn't she like just play hard to get the entire time because she
No,
doesn't
she
remember
forgets
him?
who he
She
is
forgets
because
who he
she's a different
is.
version.
I mean, it's consolidated, but there's like
No,
platonic where
because he's still
one's like,
longing for her. That's not platonic
yeah.
on his end.
Okay, so both have to not want each
Both
other,
have to
but the
we literally
audience
like
wants it.
nobody has ever tried to cross the line. It cannot be the will they, won't they, or I'm into it or you're not. It has
Oh,
to
I thought it
be
was the
two
will they won't.
people that are hot that don't are not trying to even fuck each other. You only see that when they happen. One of them happens to be gay. That's when you see it.
Diner, why would you say something so bold, so controversial, so provocative?
Natasha to
Well, I
Steve
thought
Rogers.
I thought of Definitely Maybe, which is an old Ryan Reynolds movie
Oh God.
where he
Good
dates
film.
Isla
Good
Fisher
film.
for, well, he doesn't date her. He pretends not to want her for however many years, and
Okay, but see if you
they
say
eventually
pretends
get
not to
together at
want.
the end, but still he has to get married to someone else and blah blah
What?
blah. So I don't know.
What about Fall Guy? They were friends
Okay.
enough.
No,
He
don't they hook up at the end, or am I tripping?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying are you saying they never? Or just it takes long enough for them to like.
How can
But
you
they hooked
give
up
us an
in the
example
beginning
where
of the
they have
film
sex
too,
in the
though.
second or third act? Because that means that that's where they were always headed.
All right, I'm losing. Okay, so what is the actual prompt Diner in the Dash?
That is a very good question.
Is it that
I
two very attractive people, which I don't think we should say that, two people on screen give the audience the idea, which is usually based on attraction, but two people on screen give the audience the idea that they should at least kiss,
right.
but they never ever do, or they just take a while to do it.
Well, I got an
I would say they
example.
never ever do.
Okay,
Yeah, to
Robert,
take a
go ahead.
while. It's every movie ever.
No, it's not, baby.
No.
It took
No.
Jim and Pam 4 seasons to kiss.
Okay, well, I would agree
Well,
that
that's
Four
true.
seasons.
That's true.
well,
That's
how many
TV
total
though. That's
seasons are there
TV.
of The Office?
100 or something, I think.
No,
Eventually, they got to 100. So,
not episodes, seasons.
I think it was like 9 seasons.
there's like 8 or 9 of them.
I say Jim and Pam them. Halfway through the season for
This
y'all
is
not to do
crazy.
anything. It's pretty good. Go ahead, but that's not the prompt. Go ahead, Robert. I think you
Uh,
had one for us.
yeah, Natasha and Steve Rogers and Cap and the Avengers movies.
Thank
Thank
They
you.
were
you. Thank you.
they were they
Oh,
were
that's good.
they were
Uh,
very platonic.
Hold on. I don't know if I agree
wait.
with.
No.
Well, no, I think this. I can't think of
Weren't
who
there
tried to make a movie.
flashbacks?
No, no, they kissed once as a distraction because of PDA because they
So
were trying to
then,
No,
hide.
that
That
no,
doesn't
doesn't
count.
then,
count.
That
That
does
does
not
not
count.
count because they
No,
weren't
no,
kissing
I
as
don't agree.
romantic
You
gestures.
know what they're trying to do to the viewer by having them kiss. That does not count.
Oh, come on.
no, no.
No, no.
Strike it.
I forgot they did that shit. They're not. They're not. That's the oldest trick in the book.
They're not slick. We know Scarlett Johansson gonna have something going on with her fine ass. So I mean, I'm gonna say. So I
What do you
was.
think of Captain America? Is he on the same list as Glenn Powell? That you're not into him either? Is he too short?
No, I think he's hot. Okay,
But
I'm not gonna say anything because T's trying to set me up. I think Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds, and Glenn Powell are like in this box. I put them in this box over here. And it's not a bad box. It's a great box. It's a good box. I think they're all great. Their movies make a lot of money. I think they're very talented, and I like that people find them attractive. But there's a
but
box. They're just in a box for me.
Okay, but what's that box as it relates to you, and you?
It's
What
just
do
a
you think about the
box.
level of attraction?
It's a box.
Is it a white
So
box?
Captain America is in a different box than Ryan Gosling and Ryan Reynolds.
Thor and Captain America are in separate boxes than those two. Than those
Okay,
two.
got it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
You putting
But
you putting Thor in a separate box than Glenn Powell,
She doesn't think Glenn Powell is attractive.
but you think
I
Thor
didn't
is
say
more
that.
attractive than
Glenn Powell, I think I'm so glad people find you attractive.
Wait, that's different than you. Okay, never.
Yeah, she does. She thinks Thor is
That's
hotter
not what
than Glenn
I've never
Powell.
said that. I've never said that.
Okay, but
Uh,
are you factoring in height? Because Captain America is not as tall as Glenn Powell.
Chris Hemsworth is a very sexy man. That is my final statement.
but
Hemsworth.
Glenn Powell is a fellow Texan. I thought that
I
was the, what
agree,
their
and I'm
connection
glad
was.
that he is so powerful as a Texan and attractive to many people. I like
who
that.
won the 2020 election?
Who? What?
Wait, what? What is happening?
All right, let's wrap it up. We have been here for almost 2 hours. I love it. Um, Diner in the Dash, I think you've left us with an affliction. I think you've left us with something to think about. And maybe as a filmmaker, I need to be the one to be so bold and provocative. Why would you say something so controversial? Why would you say that? Why would you introduce such a thing? Two sexy people. We'll say sexy because attraction, we'll say two sexy people. I think we can all agree that there's some sort of sexual tension or sexiness on screen, whether we would do it or not. There's some two sexy people on screen that never do anything physically intimate with each other. Because I think everybody like took
Well,
it
there's
out.
lots of examples of that, but usually it's because the girl doesn't want the guy. Like the guy
Yeah.
makes a shot, shoots a shot, and the girl rejects him, and that's their banter.
And that's why I think the prompt is interesting, right? Because that I have a lot of, but I think the idea is that they're just there and they're cool with each other. And there's this idea that they could be, but they never are. And no one actually says anything. I think that is a theme that works in portions of a movie or a TV show, but eventually they come together. And
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a storyline that we've seen a lot, but then at some point they realize, oh shit, we're supposed to be together the whole time.
I
There's
remember,
like 10 black movies that have that same exact plot. Two
correct.
friends that are really just friends. Everybody keeps telling them they're supposed to be together, but they ignore it, and then they fall in love.
It happens so many times. But I remember there's some movie, and it's an old no, not a movie. It's an old show, and they were like, I can't believe these two never got together. And I just remember seeing it, but I dumped it because I don't think I watched the show. They were like, how did these two never get together? I think it was one of those like One Tree Hill type shows, which One Tree Hill is like the best. One Tree Hill
This
had everybody have sex with everybody in the end, so we can
this
just
hypothetical is like if Love and Basketball is a story about two friends that literally never get together and never try to get together, and then they just grow up, and then they're both playing basketball. The end.
the end. I guess that's not something that the audience wants to see. But, just wrapping it all up, I think that there was no lack of physical intimacy with Baby Girl and Nosferatu. I think that is a rarity. I think Nosferatu is a Robert Eggers movie through and through, where the darkness, the violence, the lack of agency, the turmoil, the desire, everything comes together beautifully. I think he has that in every single one of his movies, where some sort of imminent kind of being that only certain people can see at certain times until it wants to like overtake and kill. Before I can't end this space without shouting out Willem Dafoe and Lily-Rose Depp. Willem Dafoe, Willem Dafoe, Willem Dafoe. Like, what an
And Robert
amazing,
Eggers for being him. I love you, Robert,
absolutely.
if you're
Like, I'm
listening.
just obsessed with the performances in Nosferatu. This is a movie about a sicko, all right? And there's like a plague, and there's a lot of really grotesque scenes, and we all just had the time of our lives. So that's just real directing, that's real writing, that's real art, that's real shout out to the casting director. Like, we made the right decisions across the board. Everyone did fantastic.
Do you
Uh,
know who played his minion, Count or Orlok's minion dude, who was like locked in, like he was in
oh
jail?
my gosh, he was
Whoever
amazing.
that guy fucking, he was throwing fastballs 100 miles an hour, and I loved
Man,
every second of his performance.
him and Lily-Rose Depp were neck and neck, quite frankly, with their
I agree, I
possession.
totally agree with that.
Man, thank
Some
you.
of the physical stuff that Lily Rose Depp had to do in this movie is legitimately insane. And I didn't watch The Idol, so I had never seen her. That is a fucking star. She
A
had to do
star.
so much in this performance. That I know that this space wasn't about her performance. That is a star-making performance. I was blown
Period.
away by it.
End of discussion. Not a stunt, not a effect, just her going crazy, convulsing and spitting and rolling her eyes and contorting her body. Like, I mean, an
And
absolute
fucking. Don't
star.
forget the fucking.
Absolutely. Yes. It should not be taboo. Yes. The sex scene was one of the most impressive sex scenes I've seen in the last 10 years. I'm
Which
not gonna lie
one?
to you. The one where she actually nutted, that one was the most important.
I feel like she nutted in both of them.
Well, maybe she did. I don't think she did in the last one. That's probably a whole nother hour and a half conversation of women being satisfied, which is not taboo. This anything can be talked about here. But thank you so much. I think the last thing I want to say about Nosferatu and Baby Girl is not about either of those movies at all. Watch Honora. Honora is so good. Also, a very
So
sensual
good.
movie, a very intimate
A very
movie,
horny movie, but amazing.
very, very horny. I'm just glad that what we watched in our community was able to open up the discussion on horniness. All right.
Another star-making performance at the center of Honora as well.
Shout out to, is it named Mickey? Mikey.
Mikey Madison.
Mikey
Mikey Madison.
Madison. I mean, if we got a Nosferatu, Baby Girl, a Nora type beat coming in for 2025, I'm into it. Um, Sex should be less taboo. Talk about it. Arousal, desire, intimacy, and physical intimacy and sexual acts are all very normal. I know we live in America, so we have to be mindful. But thank goodness for everything that we are able to experience on screen. This is what we watch. Happy What We Watch Wednesday. Bye.